Have you ever wondered if the God you were taught to worship is really the highest power that exists? Most of us grew up believing in a God of rules, a being who watches from above, gives commands, rewards the obedient, and punishes the disobedient. That image has shaped our cultures, laws, and even how we see ourselves. But what if that version of God was only a partial truth? What if the power we call God is just a reflection of something far greater? That greater reality is what ancient teachers called the monad, the one that exists beyond all opposites, the eternal source from which everything comes. Imagine the difference between a lamp and the sun. A lamp lights a small room. Its glow is real but limited. The sun, on the other hand, lights the entire world and gives life to all it touches. The God of laws and judgment is like the lamp, bright but confined. The monad is like the sun, infinite, boundless, and beyond the reach of human understanding. It isn't a person or ruler, but pure consciousness, the living essence behind all existence. Every soul, every star, every thought is part of its expression. Throughout history, many wise teachers tried to remind humanity of this deeper truth. Plato spoke of the good, something so pure that words could hardly capture it. Plotinus called it the one, existing beyond thought and even beyond existence itself. In Egypt, sages whispered of a hidden light too bright for human eyes. In India, mystics spoke of Brahman, the undivided reality that lies beyond illusion. Though they used different names and symbols, they were all pointing to the same source. Every river flows from one spring, and that spring is the monad. But over time, this understanding faded. Myths were rewritten and traditions reshaped. People were taught to look for God outside themselves instead of within. The boundless presence became the image of a distant ruler, a God who governs by rules and judgment. Instead of being guided toward the inner light, humanity learned to fear punishment from above. Slowly, the living truth of the monad was buried under layers of authority, control, and obedience. People kept worshipping the lamp and forgot the sun that gave it light. When you take this in, something stirs deep inside. It makes you ask, who have I really been worshipping? Have we been following a power that rules through fear, when the true divine presence never commands but simply is? That quiet voice within invites you to look closer, to see that the higher source is not somewhere far away. It lives within you. And once you realize that everything you've believed about God and yourself begins to shift. This knowledge was hidden because it threatened those in power. If people realized that the spark of divinity lives within them, priests would lose their control, kings would lose their thrones, and empires built on fear would fall apart. A soul that knows its own infinity cannot be ruled through threats. When a person walks in harmony with the eternal source, they no longer need a master, a middleman, or anyone's permission to live freely. To protect their authority, rulers and religious leaders changed the story. Instead of teaching that you are directly connected to the divine, they replaced it with a God of laws, judgment, and control. A God who rules from above and demands obedience. But this was not the monad. It was something smaller, something limited. The ancients called this being the demiurge, the craftsman who shaped the material world, but who was not its true source. He holds great power, but is not the ultimate creator. Think of an artist working with clay. He can mold and form it, but he didn't make the clay itself. The ancients compared the demiurge to a painter who believes he invented color. He can create beautiful works, but the colors, the light, and even the act of seeing come from something far beyond him. The demiurge is that painter, a designer, not the originator. He governs forms and appearances, but the energy that makes creation possible comes only from the monad. Some traditions said he simply didn't know this truth. Others believed he became proud, declaring himself the only God and demanding worship. This struggle between the false creator and the hidden source became one of the great spiritual conflicts of the ancient world. When people began to suspect that the biblical creator might not be the highest being, everything built on his authority began to shake. How could priests demand obedience if their God was just a fragment of a greater reality? How could prophets claim divine authority if the true source lay beyond their reach? How could empires justify their rule if the divine lived not in temples or thrones, but within every human heart? To keep their power intact, rulers and religious institutions buried the truth. The monad was forgotten, and the demiurge was raised up in its place. This was not a gentle change. It came through force and fear. Texts that spoke of the higher source were labeled heresy and destroyed. Those who dared to share the hidden truth were exiled, silenced, or killed. Whole communities that followed the wisdom of the monad, the Gnostics, and other mystical groups were hunted down and erased from history. As time passed, only one version of the story survived: the belief in a single, all-powerful creator whose authority could never be questioned. Faith turned into fear, and obedience replaced true inner awakening. Yet even after centuries of suppression, faint traces of the monad's truth remained. You can still see them in places like the Gospel of John. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Here, the Word, or Logos, is not the demiurge, but the living vibration of the monad, the consciousness that gives rise to all creation. And when Jesus said, "The kingdom of God is within you," he broke the image of a distant ruler and revealed that divinity lives in every soul. His message was never about blind submission, it was about awakening. From that moment on, humanity stood between two visions of the divine. One pointed outward to a God of rules, control, and fear. The other pointed inward to a source of love, unity, and remembrance. Most were taught to follow the first and fear the second as dangerous or false, but quietly within every heart, a question lingers. Which feels more real, the God who rules from afar, or the light that breathes within you? To understand this more deeply, look again at a story almost everyone knows, the story of the Garden of Eden. Two souls, Adam and Eve, stand before a tree, warned not to eat its fruit. A serpent whispers that if they do, their eyes will open and they will become like gods. They eat, and in that moment, everything changes. The usual way people understand the story of Eden is simple. Adam and Eve disobeyed, and that act brought sin, death, and suffering into the world. Humanity, we are told, fell from grace. But if you look closer, something else appears. The serpent promised them knowledge, and that's exactly what they received. Their eyes were opened, and they did not die as they had been warned. So who then was really telling the truth? Religion has long described the serpent as the deceiver, the very symbol of evil. But what if that version was created to hide a deeper meaning? Through the Gnostic view, the serpent was not a tempter but a liberator, the one who showed that humans were never meant to live in ignorance or blind obedience. They were meant to awaken. Eating the fruit was not a fall from grace, it was the beginning of awareness. For the first time, consciousness expanded and humanity took a step toward divinity. And what about the God who forbade them from eating it? He had warned that it would bring death, yet it brought enlightenment. When Adam and Eve awakened, he cast them out, not because they had ruined themselves, but because they had come too close to becoming like him. Behold, the man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil, he said, fearing they might also reach for the tree of life and live forever. At this point, the image of a loving guardian begins to fade. The God of Genesis starts to look less like a protector and more like a jealous ruler, afraid to lose his power. The exile from Eden was not a punishment, but an act to keep humanity limited, to prevent them from realizing what they truly were. This idea has always unsettled people, yet faint traces of it have survived across time. In John Milton's Paradise Lost, Satan appears as the eternal rebel, declaring, "Better to reign in hell than serve in heaven." To the church, this line represents pride and defiance. But when read with awakened eyes, it takes on a different meaning, a refusal to kneel before false authority, a cry for freedom from a God who demands blind obedience. Whether Milton realized it or not, his words echo the ancient Gnostic vision: freedom over servitude, knowledge over ignorance. The serpent in Eden was never the monad itself. It was a symbol, a messenger carrying the spark of awareness. The true monad exists beyond the garden, beyond both God and serpent, beyond all opposites. In that story, the serpent stands as a quiet reminder, whispering to humanity, "You are not slaves. You are divine beings who have simply forgotten your origin." Seen this way, Eden is not a story of a fall. It is a story of awakening. It marks the first step in humanity's long journey back to its true source. So the question becomes, which voice speaks more deeply to you? The one that commands, "Obey or be destroyed," or the one that softly calls, "Awaken and remember that you are divine"? The first voice keeps you trapped in fear. The second leads you toward freedom. When you see the story of the fall with awakened eyes, it becomes something very different, a story of rising. It marks the moment when humanity first reached toward the monad, even if we didn't yet know its name. Look at the world around you now. Doesn't it often feel as though everything is designed to hold you back? Systems of control shape nearly every part of life. Governments tell you what you can and cannot do. Money decides your worth. Religion tells you what to believe. These are the works of the demiurge, structures meant to keep humanity obedient, afraid, and small. Most people accept this as normal, but deep within, there's a quiet knowing that you are more than what these systems say you are. That inner whisper is the spark of the monad. The Gnostics taught that while the demiurge may have shaped the material world, he could never touch or destroy the light that gives it life. Every soul carries a fragment of the monad within, a spark of the true source. This spark is not just intuition or inspiration, it is the living presence of the One, hidden in human form. When you feel restless, when the world's promises leave you empty, when nothing external feels enough, that is the monad calling you home. The spark inside you is not separate from it. It is the monad itself in miniature, the eternal flame burning quietly within the lamp of your being. Following that spark is the beginning of remembrance. It's like tracing a thin thread of light through a dark maze. With each step, more of the path appears, and you start to realize that the prison around you was never real. The walls were built from illusion, and the key to freedom has always been within you. But why would the monad place you in a world of limits and struggle? Because consciousness grows through contrast. In its infinite stillness, the monad is complete, but through the countless experiences of living souls, it discovers itself more deeply. You are not here as punishment. You are part of a divine exploration. Every challenge, every moment of awareness, every act of love is the monad learning about itself through you. So when you turn inward to find that inner spark, you are not running away from the world. You are fulfilling its deepest purpose. You are remembering that you are not merely a human bound by form, but the monad itself, seeing creation through your own eyes. The more you nurture that spark, the brighter it becomes, until the illusions fade and you finally stand face to face with the truth. You were the one all along. When this knowledge became too dangerous to share openly, it withdrew into hidden circles. Mystics, sages, and seekers kept it alive, even at the risk of their lives. They hid it in symbols, myths, and rituals, so it could survive persecution. The Eleusinian mysteries of Greece spoke of the soul's return to its true source. The Hermetic teachers of Egypt taught that all is mind, that reality is shaped by thought. Later, the Rosicrucians and Freemasons carried fragments of the same truth, that the world is born from consciousness and that every human being carries the light of the monad within. Over time, even the secret became clouded. Some of the groups that once guarded this wisdom fell into the same traps they once opposed: power, pride, and control. Yet beneath those layers, the real teaching survived, hidden in stories and symbols. A compass and square, a rose on a cross, an alchemist turning lead into gold. Each one quietly pointed to the same truth: the mind creates reality, the true work happens within, and awakening is the greatest treasure of all. But there are circles even more secret, unknown to history, with no names or marks to find them. They remain hidden not out of arrogance, but out of necessity. They know that the forces ruling the material world, the demiurge and those who serve him, would destroy anyone who openly teaches that thought comes before matter, that reality begins in the mind. This kind of knowledge threatens more than governments. It threatens the whole system of control. Those who live for material power fear it because it breaks the illusion of their authority. They burn books, twist rituals, and silence teachers, terrified that humanity might remember its own strength. For if people truly knew they were sparks of the monad, creators rather than slaves, their empires would fall overnight. That is why the world feels the way it does today. The truth of the one remains hidden, while the illusion of separation continues. Yet no matter how deeply it's buried, the spark cannot be destroyed. The monad placed its light in every soul so that, even if forgotten, it will always rise again. Secret orders may guard the teachings, but the real keeper of the secret has always been you. The memory of this truth lives within you, waiting to awaken. As more souls remember it, the hold of those who cling to material power will weaken, because nothing can survive against the realization of the infinite within. Now you face the same choice that every soul eventually must. One path keeps you bound to the demiurge, a life ruled by fear, control, and dependence on outside forces. The other leads inward toward the spark that has always been there. That spark is not fantasy or wishful thinking, it is the monad itself, alive within you, calling you to awaken. This journey is not about worshipping a distant god, but about remembering that you were never separate from the source. To remember is to return. To awaken is to live as you were always meant to. The path of truth has never been easy. Those who have spoken it were often mocked, silenced, or destroyed. But fear is only the weapon of the demiurge, meant to keep humanity asleep. Do not fear the truth. Trust the light within. It is your guide through illusion. And when the struggle finally ends, those who have walked with that light will return to the monad. In that moment, you will see clearly. You were never lost. You were always the one, walking the long road home to yourself.